Well, good morning and welcome to a spring spectacular. It's me again, Charles, and we're here on the Upper Usk. It's probably the quintessence of a spring river. The daffodils are out, the chaffinches are in full burst of song, and we've got a river in front of us that's just finding down after an awful lot of rain. Now, my job today is to introduce you to early season fly fishing for trout on a river. The water's cold, it's been a funny old winter, it's a lot of rain. If we get a hatch, and Lord knows I hope we do get a hatch, it's going to be very sporadic, it's going to be very pinpointed to the middle part of the day. And it might only be 20 minutes, but it might be the most explosive 20 minutes you've ever had. So without further ado, onto the table, let's have a look at some gear. Leaders, good idea, we like those a lot. Tapered please, because they transmit the energy when you're casting. 9 foot's fine because you can always add a tippet. You can add a tippet as long as you want. That's what I've learnt last year. You're always learning in this game. So I'll need something to match to the bottom of that. This is 7x. Well, here is a loaded spool of tippet that says 5x. Well, putting 7x on 5x, that's not going to work. You have to match the tippet to whatever's on here to your leader. So 7x I need there rather than 5x to go with that. It's really quite fundamental, it's quite simple. Do I need a dry fly powder? Don't know, might do. But I like fishing dry fly, I like drying my flies, I like keeping them afloat, so yes I do. So that's a desiccant, that takes the water off, it whisks it away. We surround ourselves with flies. I was chatting to Damon earlier, he said, you've got about the same amount of fly boxes as I have, how many do you use? And we both agreed it was about 2. So don't worry about not surrounding yourselves with that box, that box, that box, that box or that box, because really at the end of the day just have a few flies that you've got confidence in. But how do you know what confidence to have in a fly if you don't normally fish on rivers? There is a very, very simple way of determining what to use. To most of you, it looks like a bit of net curtaining and 2 dowel rods. And you know what? You'd be absolutely right. So what am I going to do with it? You watch this. We've got most of the more common species you'd hope to find in a river like this, in a free, what we call a freestone river. I'm really poor at the actual terms, but we've got what we call stone clingers. Now, if you look at this little character here, but they're designed, they're very flat, so they actually grip onto rocks. I think that's probably an olive upright. Over here, we've got probably an embryonic March brown, and both are similar, and they both carve out their lives just clinging onto rocks. This one's slightly different. This is a caseless caddis. Now, we're all familiar with the caddis that actually builds these wonderful intricate little tubes made out of stones, or little bits of twig and so forth. These don't. These actually do exactly the same thing. They hold onto rocks. This little chap here, as you can see, is gripping onto that, is what we call the Rhyocophila. If you look at the flies that we use for them, they don't actually look anything like these. It's ridiculous, really. We're just rather grateful that trout are not too particular and fussy. And over here, you've got a grey freshwater shrimp. and you've got a slightly darker one. Is there any difference? Well, no, not really. Other than that's grey, that one isn't. And amongst all these, you've got a much faster looking upwing nymph here. These will be the little, I don't think we got a blue wing there, but we certainly got some baited. So these are called Batis nymphs. They're called agile darters. I wonder where they got their name from. It's not agile darting now, look. So you've got all the clues you ever need just by having a bit of net curtaining and a bit of dowel. Now, I bet you thought we were never going to get around to rods and reels and lines and all the other stuff that we need. Well, here we are with a rod. It's not just any rod, it's a 9-foot rod, and it's a 9-foot 4-weight rod. Or why a 4-weight? Because it's really the go-to for me on rivers. You can do everything reasonably well with this. You could nymph with it, you can wet fly fish with it, you can dry fly fish with it. So if you are going to restrict yourself to one rod, then this really will do the work for you, and it's got enough backbone if you get a big fish to land. I'm sorry it's not a bright coloured fly line. I tend not to like bright coloured fly lines, but I'm going to double it up and I'm just going to thread it through those rings. Now, why am I doing that? Well, it's cold. If I miss a ring, that's got enough weight not to go all the way down. That's why you double up a fly line. Got more to work with, nice and easy, but this is the real reason you do it, is that you don't put any strain on the rod tip. You can hold that very fragile tip. That's the reason we're doing it, just to support it, pull it, and in the process, I've got a leader on here, which I'll probably change, but pull it through, I've got a working amount of fly line outside of that tip top, so I'm good to go. Now I've cunningly put a little tippet ring on here. We're going to be putting quite a big fly on, so to support a big fly you need a fairly thick tippet. Now the smaller the fly, really the smaller the tippet. So on a tiny fly, and we're often using very small flies, we'll probably be using something in the region of what they call 7X, which is about 2 pounds and under, 2 pound breaking strain. For this I'm going to go up a bit and use a thing called 6X. Now 6X is about 3 pounds. How do you measure the tippet that you want? Well, you go from the tip of your nose and you pull outwards. I want quite a long tippet, so I'm going to go a little bit longer. I'm going to go a whole 2 arms width, like so. But give yourself an idea of measurement that you understand. I've threaded my nylon through that little tiny tippet ring, and I'm just going to do a 4-turned blood knot. Here's our tippet, and I want a long tippet to float. Why a long tippet? Well, simply because I want it to coil and move and behave as very much as part of the river surface, so I don't get drag, I don't alert the trout, because these are wild trout. They're not stock, they're just grown up in this environment. They know an imposter. So take away anything that might actually put that trout on full alert. And that's why I use a long tippet. Now I've shown you all these flies and all the rest. This is the box I probably would take. And Duncan, who's on the river most of the time, has said, the fly that I tied last night, there, that one should do the damage. Now I tend to always go into that hook from the bottom and then make my knot. So we're prepared. I'm just going to get a little bit of that unction there and just put it through that wing. But I'm forcing it into that wing, comme ça, so it really gets a good anointing. I'm trying to leave as much as I can just there. If the fish, and we haven't introduced this, if the fish are really fussy and it's very bright, What I will do is I will pop a little bit of mud down just to take away the glint of the nylon. Won't necessarily sink it, but it will take away the shine. So that's our dry fly rod set up. If you've not got a hatch going on, you'll want something that actually fishes at various layers, so you might encounter fish feeding up through the layers, because of course the flies that we're talking about this time of year generally live out their life as a nymph form. The stone clinger is exactly what it says on the tin. It clings onto stones, and therefore it's going to be at the bottom, and then it comes off and either goes to the bank and hatches off, or makes a pretty uncomfortable journey up through the layers, and that's when it's most susceptible to a trout, up to the surface, where again it is really at the mercy of the elements, and especially the attentions of the trout. So by having an array of flies that actually encompass all those stages is not a bad idea. So here I'm going to use the ability to be able to fish various flies, and I'm going to go into this little box of tricks here. Actually, this is all I really need, and pull out one of these. What's one of these, you say? Well, it's a bit of partridge, wood duck in the tail and hare's ear, and a little darkness at the thorax. And the reason is, that's what I want to emulate. So I know that by looking at the river before I've even started, I've got some approximation of what to put on. It's a clue. So I can fish this with a degree of confidence. Now you're probably all thinking, yes, but that fly didn't have a great big gold bead attached to it. No, it didn't. That's where the little bit of bling comes in, but it's where the weight, because it's tungsten, is going to help us get down to where that fly should be, right down at the bottom. So that's that one. Now we're going to go up to the next one. Now this is going to be more of a search pattern, and I'm going to go in and get a little red tag. There we are. Again, with a little bit of tungsten on it. The combination for river trout, a black and red, is just, it's sort of just right. I don't know why it is. You know, people say, ah, yes, but you need a bit of this, you need a bit of that, you need a bit of, you know, something else. At the end of the day, it's black and red, and that's just a great combination. And moving up near the surface, I'm going to put on a spider. It's basically a wet fly, and that will represent the hatching nymph, or the travelling nymph up near the surface. So that's our two primary outfits. There we are. All we need now is a river, and it's over there. So why am I going to start here? Well, in many ways you've got to imagine yourself as a fish in the river. Now, it's silly to think that a trout thinks, but it's going to put itself in a position that's going to provide several things. One, cover, because it doesn't want to be predated upon, because it is. Second, it's going to need a place where it feels comfortable. It's not too hard to live. We all like a comfy lifestyle, well, so does a fish. And the other thing is, there's got to be a constant stream of food. Whether we like it or not, trout are an eating machine. If they don't eat, they don't survive. And when somebody says, oh, they're off the feed, actually, you're probably not. You just haven't found the answer. They've got to eat. At some point in the day, they've got to eat. So you look at a river with those things in mind. So they're not going to be in that fast water over there. They might be behind a rock, but it's unlikely that they're going to be over there. So they're not going to be in this really turbulent stuff, because it's hard blooming work. You know, especially in these shallows, because the speed of the water goes all the way down. They'll be in the softer water, just on the end outside. You see where you've got that white poppy water, then it starts to get softer over here. Well, you might find fish there. You're probably only going to catch smaller fish here. But as a newcomer, all you're interested in is that first tug, that little start tremor of crikey, that electric charge that tells you that you've attached something that you don't know anything about. And that's all we're really interested in. We're not interested at this point in our careers with a fly rod of trying to catch the biggest fish and staking one out. That can come later. Now you just want to catch one. So let's try and catch one. Famous last words. Now, before I go out here, just a quick, I put on eyewear. I've got some polarized glasses which will help me look through the water, but they protect my eyes from any travelling fly or anything. Just a little bit of safety. I've got, I tend to use waders or boot waders that have got sticky bottoms. Today I've got a pair that have got felt on, and I know this river it's gravelly, it's rocky, and these will give me better traction. I tend not to put studs in because I don't like that abrasive grinding on the gravel. I do think that can alert fish at close quarters. So where I really don't need it, I don't have it. So that's just a personal preference. But yeah, felt in these sort of conditions I prefer over the sticky bottom, but most of the time I'll be in those stickies. Right, so what I'm doing here is prospecting. I'm casting out my 3 flies upstream, little bit of slack line, keeping that rod really high and letting the current do the work. And to be honest, this is the best introduction I could possibly show you for fishing river. It's easy fishing. There's not too much complication. All you've got to do is pick, oh, I don't know whether that was a rock or a fish. Pick that line up, roll, pick it up, little short cast, don't overdo it, a little bit of a downstream mend. I just rolled that line downstream just to give myself a bit of slack and let the current pick that up and let that come round gently and softly in the current. And then I might just figure of 8 it back with my hands. So figure of 8ing like so. And then I'll take a step down. This is all about water coverage. Okay, so don't stay in one spot, cover water. The bit where I'm going to get really interested, I mean really, you know, I am, oh, this is looking good, is not here. It's actually where that current softens out, where it almost fans out to create this great big flat area. That's where the fish will be, because it's easier. But you notice, if I do that, if I cast directly downstream like so, that water current is picking those flies up and shoving them up right up on the surface. I don't want that. So consequently, that is why I'll cast upstream there. And then I might make a upstream mend. I can control that fly, but you see there it's picked up. I'm looking at that hinge of line there. If that straightens or does anything odd and I don't feel the fish but I see that straighten, I will lift. So I take a step down. I would just say one thing about this is, you know, you're fishing it competently when you give yourself to the river. You literally do. You can feel every nuance, every stone that actually breaks off your tippet. Everything. Well, I'm going to have to change anyway because I've just lost 3 flies. Ha ha!
According to our investigator. According to our investigator. According to our investigator.
There's a few more fly coming off here. There you go, this one. So ease my way into a better position. There we go. There we go. Happy flipping days. Now, this may not be a big trout to you. To me, it is magnificent. Look at that. Absolutely. Where I came in as a kid fishing and as an old man of 71, still thrilling to a wild usk brown trout in May, or in March even. So you're so excited. On a dry fly. No one at all could be happier than me to catch that little chap. No one. It's as they slip out of the hand, it's that glide across your fingers, that brief, momentary touch with nature that's wild. It's just the best. Simply that, the best. Always have somebody that's a lookout, always. Doesn't matter if it's a Labrador. In this case, it wasn't a Labrador, it's Duncan. Duncan looks after the area for a dear friend of mine. And he, as soon as he waved his hand and pointed, I knew that there were fish coming up. And that's why we skedaddled from that lovely little run up there where we caught absolutely nothing down here, because Duncan's on the river every single day. If he says come, you don't muck about, you go quickly, and that's exactly what we did. You know, isn't it incredible that we came down just for that split second and you almost felt the world was alive. You know, there were bugs in the air, there were fly on the water, trout, the odd trout rising and moving. You could sense they were moving. Now it's dead, it's just gone. And that's what I meant when the window that you have here is so short. If you miss it, you miss it. You absolutely miss it. And you'd think there's absolutely no fish in this stretch, but we know that there was one there and one there and one there, and we saw a couple more down there. And goodness knows how many more fish are in this particular run. Yeah, it's just weird. So, be there on time. My 3 tips would be always use as light as you can. Now that means tippet, leader, fly rod and fly line. And I think presentation is all, and that encapsulates that whole thing. So I tend to fish as light. Even if it's a streamer, I'll fish a 5 over a 6 or a 7 or whatever. So yeah, fish light. Second one, presentation. I know I mentioned it before, but presentation of you the fisher. Because stealth, wading gently, not crashing through a river or a still water even, can lead to fish. The other one is just patience. Just wait. Now there's no tips on tackle or anything else. This is about you. It's about you and how you fish your gear. So be patient. Wait for the rise, especially this time of year. It's been slow. We've only had a moment to capture that fish. Had we not been here, had we not waited it out until that moment, we wouldn't have caught anything at all. So just be patient. So that's my 3 tips. Fish fine, fish light, presentation of you, and the 4th one, always have a trusty 4-legged companion if you're allowed to. Well, it's that moment, you know when it happens, the river's gone dead, it's gone cold, but we've had our moments in the sun. We've had that moment when the March brown got off, not in huge numbers, but in fish interesting numbers. We managed to make that count. And for me, that's the quintessence of spring fishing. And I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've got something from this, just even if it's tying a knot differently or maybe approach differently, just some little nugget that helps you to catch a fish, because it's not about me, it's about you. So that's it. Hope you've enjoyed it. See you again sometime.